I am quite honored now to introduce to you our Charter Day homecoming speaker, Emmitt R. Jarley, an alumnus of the class of 1996. We have before us a scholar of eminent reputation who has done exciting work in the area of molecular biology and biochemistry. And when you read about his recognitions, you see that he has trained among the best and worked among the best of scientists in the country. Dr. Jarley completed a bachelor's degree in biology at Tuskegee in 1996. During this time, he was a Mark Scholar, a Presidential Scholar, and one of USA Today's top 40 national scholars under the guidance of Dr. Aaron O'Shea, current president of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. He co-authored a seminal paper that really put him on a trajectory toward excellence in the research that he's decided to do. That paper described in the Science Journal how genes are turned on and off through protein modification and protein localization in and out of a cell's nucleus. Those of you who are in the field of biology know how important that paper is. So you really did some groundbreaking work as an undergraduate. And that was just the beginning of his fame. He received a Ph.D. in biochemistry and molecular biology from the University of California, San Francisco, where he trained under a MacArthur Award recipient and National Academy of Sciences member, Dr. Ira Hershkowitz. And he completed the last year of his thesis work with microbiologist and National Academy of Sciences member, Dr. Carol Gross. During this time, he was a Foreign Foundation Fellow, a UNCF Merck Dissertation Fellow, as well as a recipient of the UCSF Chancellor's Martin Luther King Award for the work that he had done in diversity. As you can see, he excelled and made himself a remarkable scientist and member of the community everywhere he went. Currently, Dr. Jarley's National Institutes of Health funded research focuses on understanding gene expression, gene regulation, and host invasion of the parasitic schistosome worm, the causative agent of schistosomiasis, which affects more than 200 million people worldwide. He's a tenured associate professor in Case Western Reserve University's Department of Biology, and he also holds a position in the Center for Global Health and Disease in the Case Western Reserve School of Medicine. His work is recognized worldwide. He's doing the kind of research that is reflecting a passion to increase the health of people worldwide, and really is a consummate example of a Tuskegee alum who leads by example and it makes a choice to make the world a better place. We look forward to hearing Dr. Jarley's presentation today, and I present to you Dr. Emmitt R. Jarley, class of 1996.
Thank you, Dr. McNair, for that fantastic introduction. And you pronounce schistosomes perfectly. Dr. McNair, thank you for inviting me here as your first homecoming convocation speaker. I am really grateful for that. Thank you to Dr. George Roberts, the first gentleman of Tuskegee University. Thank you to the Tuskegee Board of Trustees. With a shout out, of course, to Irving McConnell, who took me around and showed me a little bit more things than I thought I would see and enjoyed my time. Thank you. Thank you to Interim President Dr. Morris, to the Tuskegee University alumni, the Tuskegee University student body, special guests, and at the same time, elected officials. And in this holy place, there is no way that I would say all of these thank yous without saying thank you to God. Good morning, Tuskegee. Good morning. It's so good to be back home. Tuskegee is a special place. I've been invigorated to be here over the last few days, enjoying homecoming, walking on campus again, running into old classmates, running into old friends, fraternity brothers, reconnecting with my love here for years, the time I spent here, 4 years. Tuskegee is many things to me. You see, Tuskegee is a place where a professor took a chance on a young man from the country. It's a place where I got my start in biology, where I had my first successes in science and my first failures in science. It's where I moved for the first time away from my parents, and even though I was very close, I was still homesick. It is where I found amazing friends who I can reconnect with, and those friends who I can only remember because they're no longer with us. It is a place where I fell in love for the first time, and also where I got my heart broken. It's coming home. Tuskegee is family. Today, I'm not going to talk about my research in parasitic diseases, my research in infectious diseases, and that's hard for a scientific educator not to talk about their research. If you accidentally ask me afterwards, you might get a lecture. But Tuskegee is even more special to me because I grew up here. I rode through this campus in the back of my parents' station wagon. You know, the one with the wood paneling on the side, in the back seat that looks the other way, when you don't see anything until after you've passed it. This college where I saw all these beautiful, great, amazing college kids, a clear juxtaposition of where I thought my life expected trajectory would be. It was another world, but I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I had a hardworking, strict, loving parents committed to preaching and their life work, although their occupations themselves were a lot more modest. My father was an elder in the congregation, yet he was a janitor who became a maintenance man for Montgomery Housing Authorities and eventually a locksmith. He went to school to be an electrician. He went to school to be a plumber. He went to school to be an EMT. At a certain point, I got tired of him going to school. My mother later became a kitchen worker in the VA Medical Center in Tuskegee. They worked hard to mold me and my 3 younger brothers into good men. Their expectation: love God, be honest, work hard. Where I was poor in finances, I was rich with love. I never planned to go to college. While I could dream of these amazing, great things, I thought I would become a janitor or electrician, pursue the ministry maybe. I used to pray for 2 main things: wisdom and humility. And as a consequence, I think, I ended up feeling pretty stupid and pretty embarrassed. You see, God has a sense of humor, and often his plan is not exactly the same one that you have. A high school counselor and at the former DC Wolf found me one day. She called me into her office and she began to talk to me about college. And I didn't want to tell her that I don't have the money to go to college. And so I skirted around all of the issues, and eventually she said, well, don't you want to go to college? Her name was Mildred White. I said, well, I can't afford college. She said, well, if you do well in school, you can get a scholarship. I said, well, what's a scholarship? You see that whole stupid thing I told you about earlier? Eventually, she told me what a scholarship was, and I said, I want to get one of those things. She made me dream. She made me dream of going to college. She made me dream of potential success to get out of poverty. She learned that I worked in a cotton field as a field hand, right down the street on Highway 80. First year they had droughts, the second year they had floods. I told her how we started at 8 in the morning. We would get on the back of the truck, go to the shop, sharpen our hoes. I told her how we would then get back on the truck after that, and then go out to the fields, and how early in the morning, as you walk through the cotton plants in the middle of the summer, the dew would get you completely wet. And then by 9 o'clock, you're completely dry. I did not tell her about the crop dusters that would fly over us while we were in the fields. I did not tell her how all of us were drinking out of a dipper in a single bucket, and that when I decided I didn't want to drink out of a dipper, I didn't drink water that day. Or how when I decided to bring a thing of water, everyone said that I must have been too good to drink behind them and poured my water out. And so I didn't drink water that day in the fields. I told her about me working in pulpwood in the wintertime as a way of providing funds. But then I was proud to tell her about this air-conditioned job I got down at the truck stop, working as a janitor because it wasn't in the sun. She introduced me after that to a professor at Tuskegee University. For those of you who are electrical engineers in the 8th grade, I independently identified or just discovered electrolysis using a glass of water, 2 screws, 2 wires, and 120 volts. For those of you who are not in electrical engineering, I mixed water and electricity together, and I didn't kill myself. I came to Tuskegee. She introduced me to this amazing guy, this professor, Dr. James H.M. Henderson, older guy. You could tell back in the day he must have been really handsome. You know, he had that kind of swagger. Strong-minded. He still had smooth skin. You could tell he still worked out. I don't know how old he was, but he was old. He asked me about my experiments. I began to explain to him the whole process of doing electrolysis, doing electroplating, electrolytic cells, anodes and cathodes. And he looked at me and said, I'd like for you to be in my summer program. You're too young to be in it now, but next year you can be in my program. I said, okay. I worked at the truck stop that summer. Now, there's a fireworks fireworks trailer that tends to be next door around certain times of the year, and there happened to be one there. And I didn't tell Miss White about this story. So the next year goes by, I'm working, I go to get some fireworks, and I meet this kid who's my age there. I'm like, whoa, wow, she's working here at the fireworks station. She's my age, this is great. I tell her I work next door. She says, that's fantastic, I've been so bored here. Maybe we can do lunch or something. Okay, I'll stop by on my lunch break. I stopped by on my lunch break the next day. And then the next day after that, and then a week later, I stopped by for lunch. It was great having somebody who was around my age. Her name was Heather. The third day I went back, heading back to the truck stop for work, my boss came out and met me. And he said, Emmitt, where you at? I said, I was out for lunch. Where'd you go? I just went out. Did you go to the truck stop? Yes. Was Heather there? Yes. We don't need your services anymore. See, Heather didn't necessarily look the same way I looked. But you know, one door closes and another door opens. Within 2 weeks, I was working in the laboratory at Tuskegee University. I worked in cytogenetics with a professor by the name of Dr. John Williams. Dr. Henderson asked me what did I want to do when I said genetics, and he said, I know exactly the place to put you. And he put me in this laboratory, and I started working on peripheral kidney tumor cancer cells, these cancer cells of frog kidneys. And what he said to me, he said, Emmitt, I want you to read this thesis. And I got to admit, I'm thinking, okay, am I going to get paid for this? You know, where I come from, you work to, he said, read this thesis. And I said, am I getting paid for this? He said, yes. So in essence, I got paid to learn. I sat down and read the thesis, and then I read another thesis, and I read a third thesis. And I came back to him and I said, I think I know how to G-band peripheral kidney tumor cells. He said, huh? I said, I think I know how to do it. And I told him, he said, how did you come up with that? I said, I didn't. You had 3 theses. Each one of them had a part of it. I just put it together. And me and Habib, his technician, got together when we G-banded a stain you put on chromosomes, these peripheral kidney tumor cells. After that, Dr. Henderson put me on a different project, a NASA Seeds project. And these were space tomatoes that had been in space for 6 years because the Challenger had exploded. And so they came back and I got access to those tomato plants. And Dr. Henderson's question was, is there any difference between those tomato plants that were on Earth and those that were in space? So I started doing cytogenetics, looking at chromosomal differences between the two, looking for abnormalities, and we found none. So Dr. Henderson said, okay, Emmitt, you need to learn molecular biology. I'm like, okay, what you mean, just I eat an apple or something and now I'm wise? So he said, I'm going to put you into a different lab. And there was this new, hot, young professor, a guy by the name of Dr. Prakash. So I go to Dr. Prakash's lab, and you know, he was always active and he was always moving, and first thing he did is gave me a molecular biology book to read. And I started reading that book every day. And before you know it, I was doing polymerase chain reaction, PCR, ways of amplifying DNA a millionfold in just a few hours, restriction fragment length polymorphisms. And again, we found no differences between space-exposed tomato plants and Earth tomato plants. In the end, we found out that it's possible that we might be able to eat some fruit in space. As you know, Dr. Prakash is the current Dean of Arts and Sciences. I stopped playing basketball that year to do PCR. By the time I left high school, after these experiences, I'd had over 50 scholarships, 4 full, 30 to 40 that were tuition scholarships. Many thought and expected me to leave Tuskegee. Some wanted me to leave Tuskegee. I didn't know I would stay. Matter of fact, there was a scholarship that they selected 13 people in the state to go to. It was clear that I was in a running to win. However, there was one requirement. And that requirement was that you would go to school in the state of Alabama. And at one point, one of the judges said, just say you want to stay in Alabama. And I remember the thing my parents always said, love God, be honest, work hard. I said I wasn't sure that I was going to stay in the state of Alabama. I got 13th place. It didn't matter. Where in the end, I decided I would go where my heart told me to go, where I was supposed to go, where my mind was molded, where mentors abound who care, who support, who nourish me, and who helped me to grow. I came to Tuskegee with hopes of joining the ranks of the great minds who came before me, of those who challenged the status quo. Now that can get you in trouble. So I went on a summer internship in a little place called Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories, run by Jim Watson, AKA Watson and Crick. Discovered the structure of DNA, Nobel Prize for it. And I do have a little bit of a jokester in me, but it was an issue that was close. We were in this library and there were all of these beautiful faces of these scientists. And one of the postdocs came to me and said, Emmitt, did you notice that there are no black scientists on the walls in there? I said, of course. He said, well, the reason there are none is because Watson said he couldn't find any good black scientists. And I said, hold it. I know plenty of good black scientists. And I started going down the list with Dr. Henderson first. And then I said, hold it. I'm a good black scientist. Immediately there was a bet. I decided that I would go down somewhere in New York where they said there's a park and they draw people's caricatures just as like they had in there. And so I said I would go and get my caricature drawn and bring it back and put it up in that room. So I got on the train and went to New York City. I didn't know where this park was. I didn't know the name of it. And I ran into the one person, there are, 8 million people, 9 million people in New York. I knew one person in New York City, a guy named Joel Oppenheim, who was associate dean of the School of Medicine. I was interested in MD, Ph.D. In Manhattan, walking on the street, I ran into Joel Oppenheim. And I said, I'm going to play this trick on Watson. He died. And he said, this is how you get to Battery Park. I went there, put my picture up, and after putting my picture up, it stayed there for several days. They had meetings. People came in, and they would ask, well, wow, I saw your picture. What did you do? Nothing really. I identified some factors associated with RNA alternative splicing. And they said, oh, he's so modest. Long story short, Watson got it. And they said he got it, that he understood it. And that picture ended up back in my laboratory. I have a small message, and this is to current students and to recent alumni. When I left Tuskegee, although I worked hard, etc., I still didn't have any money. I left for the University of California, San Francisco with 2 bags. I got there, and although I looked, I had no place to stay. I arrived in San Francisco homeless. My girlfriend at the time, who's currently my wife, was starting medical school at Stanford, and they had a retreat. So she gave me her car to have while she's on the retreat. I expected to sleep in Golden Gate Park that night. And in the end, I got a phone call about a professor who was out of town and his house was free. I got to stay in his house. I'd never slept in Golden Gate Park. When I say God has a sense of humor, He has His own plan for us. I'll tell you this because there are studies of success, studies of successful people. Most of them are consistent, and they come on 2 things: determination and grit. The second being faith and optimism. Don't give up when things are difficult. Difficulty builds character and strength. And like a good mother, Mother Tuskegee gives you both in order to prepare you for the challenges of the future. You will stand out as a Tuskegee graduate. Oh, yes, you will. So dream of the greatness you will achieve shortly after you have left these hallowed grounds. When I was an undergraduate, I would come to this stage occasionally when the chapel was empty and I knew no one was here. And I would mime myself speaking to a crowd and wooing the crowd and saying things. They would move at my source of wisdom, my little pint of joy, an ounce of wisdom, crowd of colorful faces, and then they applauded. Crazy dreams of a Tuskegee undergraduate. Yesterday morning, I did the same thing. For our senior alums, you are the veterans who have led the way. You have fought battles that many of us have never even heard of. You have struggled in places we have never been. You bring wisdom to the youth. Share your wisdom with us. Share your wisdom with the students here. Meet your little brothers and sisters. Teach them what you know. Share your knowledge. Support them by supporting Mother Tuskegee, supporting her walls, her clothing, supporting her dormitories, her bosom, her training and education, her center. But learning is a two-way street. We should also listen to our youth. My daughter, 2 years ago at 13, taught me something. She was on the U.S. Junior National Volleyball team. And I was getting upset because I was like, I can't understand why these girls are doing this. You're celebrating when they're making mistakes. She said, Dad, don't you know boys and girls are different? Boys need to win to be happy. Girls need to be happy to win. For everyone, my father used to always tell me stories. You know those old people, Brer Rabbit type stories? The ones that always had a meaning? One of them was about these two African boys. See, these two boys, one had been educated in the United States. He goes back home and he and his friends get together and they decide that they're going to play a joke on the old wise man. And the plan is this: we'll take a bird and we'll put it in our hand and we'll have it there. We'll ask the old wise man, is this bird dead or alive? And if he says that the bird is alive, we'll open our hand, we'll crush it and show him that it's dead. If he says that it's dead, we'll open our hands and let it fly away. So they go to the old wise man. This plan, oh wise man, tell us whether the bird that is in our hand, tell us whether it is dead or alive. And he looks at them, remembering how they were when they were children, and he smiles. And he says, it's in your hands. It is in your hands to decide whether to work hard or not work at all. It is in your hands whether to decide to stop fighting when things are difficult or to give up and go. It is in your hands to search for mentors that strengthen you when you are weak and carry you when you fail. It is in your hands to dream an impossible dream and see that impossibility become a reality. It is in your hands to go from chopping cotton in Alabama fields to chopping jeans at Tuskegee University. God bless Tuskegee University. Thank you.